Hey everyone. Today, I'd like to tell you that you are not talented.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
You are skilled.
Yeah, they had us the first half, I'm not gonna lie.
Now, I know you think I'm being clickbaity. I promise you, I am.
Stop it. Get some help.
In all seriousness, I think the word talent gets thrown around quite a bit to show admiration and appreciation for someone doing something impressive or difficult to imagine without some latent ability only a few have access to. While there are minor exceptions to the rule, I don't think that's really the case. Personally, I would argue that the real place a person's talent comes from is wherever their interests lie. As someone who's been drawing for 25 plus years now, I work as a concept artist and instructor for character and environment design. I assure you, I started at the same level as other kids my age. 99% of those we describe as having talent are the ones that continued for years to hone their skills. Those who did not do the work did not get better. Comparing it to my experience with drawing, those kids moved on to other things, where their interests truly lay. Their talent was in other fields: science, math, history, sports, the list goes on. I was lucky enough to discover my passion at a very young age. I kept working at it for many years before it paid off. Many years. Even still, I was extremely slow to improve, okay? I would fumble my way to stronger drawing skills by pure accident on the mere basis that I was drawing. I believed myself to lack the necessary talent to achieve the level of drawing I would see from my idols growing up. Comic book artists of the 90s like Todd McFarlane, Greg Capullo, and Frank Miller, to name a few. I assumed I was unable to reach that level based on some inherent personal shortcoming. I'll leave the long story for another video. I could get into that at some point. But essentially, I did not truly start to understand drawing until after I finished university. It wasn't until my mid-20s that it started to click for me. I began to realize the idea of talent, once again to use air quotes a little too much, was a lie. A lie I concocted to protect my ego from the truth that I wasn't good at the thing that I was the most passionate about. So then instead of blaming some amorphous idea, I finally got to work. I started to develop my weaknesses and hone my skills. In this video, essay, lesson, whatever you want to call it, I would like to discuss an artist that often gets placed on this pedestal for having superhuman-like abilities, who seemingly came out of nowhere and established himself as one of, if not the most skilled draftsman ever, the late and great Kim Jung Gi. So, why did Kim Jung Gi seem impossibly good? At first glance, even the most seasoned professional artist can get caught up in mythologizing his technical prowess and skill. The way he's able to orchestrate and define incredibly detailed scenes in perfect or near perfect perspective with no underdrawing and straight ahead with ink seems inhuman. And there is no wonder so many people used to line up for hours to see him draw on these massive scrolls, live in person, with no real idea of what he's drawing until he begins. But, as I've stated earlier, talent is not some magical well that only a few are able to tap into. Kim Jung Gi put in the work for many decades before he even began to become a blip on the art world's radar. As described by Kim Jung Gi himself in this excellent Proko interview from a few years back, he discusses just how much he would draw as a kid.
Everyone wants to figure out how they can get this good. How can I draw anything from imagination? How can I get such a giant visual library in my brain? Tell us the secret, Kim Jung Gi. I couldn't help myself. I asked about it too. Do you think you were born with a better memory than most people?
I'd say that I'm able to remember and recall images for a much longer period of time than most people. But I also drew so much. I probably drew way more than people think I have. I never cared for academics, so while I was attending school, I'll be drawing from first period to the very last.
Most people assume he has a photographic memory. But when I asked him about it, he said he doesn't. Of course, some part of it is a talent he was born with, but we can't overlook how much that talent was developed.
Knowing this, his skills seem a lot more understandable, or at least they should, right? He had been drawing and, more importantly, studying in a very effective way from an extremely young age. He was putting himself into difficult situations where he needed to problem solve, and was doing that before most people. He was drawing in perspective before other kids his age because he chose to. He started at 6 years old. Others, like myself, started doing the challenging fundamental practice at a later point in life. By the time he passed, he had been drawing diligently for over 4 decades. That is dedication. He did not believe himself to be all that special in terms of latent ability. He was obsessed enough to keep consistent long enough for the fruits of his labor to pay off. Maybe a more analogous comparison than talent being simply a person's interest is that it is their obsession. Kim Jung Gi was obsessed with drawing. If your goal is to be a master on the level of Kim Jung Gi, if you want that technical prowess, you have to have a combination of obsession and effective studying over time. Okay, now that we've discussed a little bit of Kim Jung Gi's backstory, shown a bit of him discussing his skills, how do we actually get there, you're asking, right? First, I would argue you need to change your attitude about what you can and can't achieve. You should be thinking clear and positive goals with positive intentions. Do not sabotage yourself by negative thoughts. That doesn't mean don't be realistic about your skills, okay? It means you should be thinking critically of what you want to improve on and work towards those goals. If you want to master a skill, you have to believe you can do it in the first place. Thinking you can reach the level of Kim Jung Gi is not out of the realm of possibility as long as you understand the level of commitment it will take. If you think something is impossible before you even begin to try, then it will be. Self-fulfilling prophecy. You're shooting yourself in the foot before you've even started, right? Want to be an absolute beast at drawing or whatever skill it is you want to improve on? Then you need to believe you can get there. Something I do if I am feeling down about my skills or I feel directionless with my art is stop drawing. Take a break and go do something else. So for me, going to train or focus on something other than art is a great way to reset my intentions. Do not force yourself to draw or study if the motivation just isn't there. Sometimes stepping back is healthy. It often is. Don't push yourself. To be clear, when I say something like, the level you want to get to, it's not meant to make you feel like every time you sit down to draw, it should be a chore or difficult. It's not like this is the hardest thing on the planet. I'm just simply coming at it from a realistic perspective. Your goals will change and grow with you. That is true. I'm merely pointing out what a master like Kim Jung Gi had to do to get to his level. Where do you want your skills to be? If you have a certain artist in mind that you'd like to reach the level or have a similar vibe in your own work, there are certain practices and studying methods that you should be doing. It can be helpful to understand what they did specifically. Everyone is on their own path. I'm only showing you my perspective. Thinking you are going to fail something before you even begin is, as I mentioned earlier, self-fulfilling. There are two possible outcomes, no matter what. You either get to the level you want to through hard work and dedication, or you don't. You might never reach that level, even with all the hard work. It's not a guarantee, but if you have a negative mindset about your chances, you'll almost certainly always fail. I choose to think positively regardless of the final outcome. Think positively and succeed, great. Think positively and fail, also great, because you've aimed high and likely achieved better results than if you had counted yourself out from the beginning. Right? If it's hard, why make it harder by having a poor outlook? If you somehow still believe your mindset doesn't matter, okay, cool, right? Then you may as well just think positively. You may as well just fake it. If it doesn't matter, be less miserable. Choose the less miserable option. Why not? Now, with your attitude in a better place, let's talk about how to achieve these actual goals, or at least how I work towards my goals. You need to learn how to learn. When I started to see significant improvement and consistent improvements in my skill is when I began to identify my weaknesses and break them down into manageable chunks. Becoming self-critical is integral to your artistic growth. A lot of people are aware of their weaknesses, but ignore them with the hopes that they will sort themselves out. They won't. Pick one thing you want to get better at. In relation to drawing, that could be anatomy, color, perspective, whatever it is. Tackle one thing at a time and study that for a while. When you start to feel burned out or like you've gotten over one difficult concept, switch to another. Keep things fresh. Draw what you like. This should be the most obvious thing, but do not draw a subject or particular thing you aren't interested in because you think you should. I myself have fallen into this trap of thinking, oh, I need to get better at X, Y, or Z because that's what I see in the industry. Not necessarily. Focus on what you enjoy and the rest will follow. Love drawing animals? Do that, right? Draw animals. Hate drawing vehicles? Don't focus on that. Build up your skills by drawing your interests. For example, Mike Mignola Comics never have cars in them because he hates drawing them. Todd McFarlane would try to obscure anatomy he wasn't sure of in shadow or with clever composition with his paneling. Play to your strengths and slowly introduce more content to your visual library as you see fit. Having manageable projects based on your interests is an excellent motivator to inadvertently get you better at a bunch of different fundamentals without noticing. Try to gamify your studying. Keep it fun. Build up your skills by drawing your interests. Don't worry about subject matter you don't enjoy. Interests change and grow, and you can come back to them when you want to. You can come back to other things when you're more interested in them. The fundamentals are present in everything. Getting proficient with one thing improves your confidence, and you are more likely to want to branch out to other subject matter later. Here is a bit of the fantastic YouTuber, Dr. Draw, explaining focused studying further.
To know what is and isn't an effective study, we need to look at the psychology of learning and how we process information, which is actually quite similar to a computer. When we get a piece of information, it ends up on our working memory. Here we decide what to do with it. It's basically where we make our day-to-day decisions. The first time we deal with certain information, it takes up quite a lot of space on our working memory. But if you've processed information before, it takes up less space. And if you've processed something for years, like your mother tongue, it doesn't take up much space at all. This is because the decisions are stored on our long-term memory, or subconscious. The more decisions you make, the more boxes end up here. This is basically how we learn, but in computer terms you could say automation.
With all that great information in our minds and focused studying understood, we can now get to the actual studying process.
If we look at a random drawing by Kim Jung Gi, you can see he masters a lot of stuff. He understands perspective, figures, clothing, motorcycles, storytelling, and proportions. If we want to draw like him, you might, like me, be doing all of those things at the same time. But let's simplify and pick one of these, say proportions of people on motorcycles. Instead of overloading our working memory, we're taking away all the extras and focus on one thing. So let's be very clear on this and write it down. We're focusing on proportions, not details. Then we go on Pinterest and search for reference images we like. Study them a bit by writing down what you observe. And now we can start with drawing. You can see that in all of these drawings, I'm not concerned with the details but purely focus at proportions. And I make notes. This is because making notes helps you get an understanding of what's going on.
An important aspect to learning how to learn is tackling your weaknesses using deliberate study methods and focusing on one thing at a time. Break your tasks down into manageable chunks and tackle them systematically. Other than drawing, one of my big passions is climbing. Similarly to drawing, I started to see massive improvements when I began to objectively address my weaknesses and devise a plan of action to improve them. Since taking climbing seriously, the same way I do drawing, I started to see significant improvement in my skill. I believe, my opinion on this is the key to learning any new skill is being honest and objective with yourself, while also remaining positive that you can improve. Focusing your studying on one particular asset and then tackling that is the key to success and deliberate and consistent improvement. Here you can see how I apply my fundamental knowledge to tackle the brilliant skill of Kim Jung Gi's work, breaking things down to the most simplified forms and trying to understand his drawings on an intrinsic level, inside and out. It is not about copying what you see aimlessly. It's about studying and breaking down his process to understand how he got there. This is how you take knowledge with you and adjust to your own creative process. Hey guys, just a quick interruption here. I wanted to show an exclusive look at my most recent Patreon lesson where I go over specific drawing techniques. So I like to do ellipses where my arm feels as comfortable as possible. I ghost and then put it down. You could also try being precise and going inside the ellipse now. Right? And the point of an ellipse is to try and get these as equal. So they're not pinching like this one, not as good as maybe this one. Right? You want the pinch to be same on either side. Another technique you should definitely incorporate is A to B, where you decide on 2 points on the paper and then draw a line between them. Or we're going to ghost the line. And I hit A, I missed B, right? So I'm going to try again. I'm going to ghost the line. If you like this, please consider helping me out and subscribing to my Patreon. The link is below. Thank you. Anyways, back to the video. Thanks. With all of that being said, to kind of wrap things up here, I don't really believe in talent. At least not in the way most people do. Sure, some people have a slightly better adaptation to certain things, or start a step or two ahead of others. But no amount of talent, right, last air quotations, will translate to mastery without doing the work. There is no amount of theorizing or hypothesizing that will translate to skill. Do you want to get better at climbing like I do? Climb a lot and train your weak movements. Do you want to get better at drawing? Draw a lot and emphasize on the fundamentals you are lacking in. Be that perspective, anatomy, color, design, etc. I know I lack in every one of them in some way, so I switch through them as I see fit. Okay, so that about concludes this essay learning practice session. If you have any questions or thoughts, other points you want to make, leave them in the comments below. I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions. Another caveat to take with you is, remember, I am just one person with one set of opinions. I'm coming at it from a professional level, trying to explain what I see as a teacher and how I think you can improve, but I only know what I know. So, do you agree or not? And if you do, great, tell me why. If you don't, be civil and try and give me some constructive reasoning as to why you don't. Okay? The majority of you watching this video are not subscribed. So, it means a lot, and it helps a lot if you click so you'll be notified when I have a new video. So like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, Kim Jung Gi was not talented. He was skilled. You are not talented. You are skilled. See ya.